offer to purchase Baltus Express Loop 110 Chestnut. That came out of closed session. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, let Steve go over the specifics with you of when it started, but why don't I let him do that first, and then I'll end it up.
Yeah, as best I can tell from what I found out, we started having dialogue with John Baltus back in spring of 2018, so it's been about a year and a half. He sounds like maybe approached us and let it be known that he was looking at selling. This was back in the day when some of the conversations were more active on the 2nd Street corridor. You remember we've done the part from Maple to Chestnut, that 2-block stretch, but we've been talking for a while now about trying to see if we can extend that someday west of Chestnut over to Stephen J. Miller Park. So I thought that might be, I think, probably an important piece to the city, and we've had conversations with him off and on since then. I don't think he's been in a real rush to accomplish this, but we're excited now that we've gotten to the finish line. It offers us both the possibility of the 2nd Street corridor someday, and as you know, after some study, the council kind of embraced the idea that when we do expand the police station someday, we would want to do it on site. If you recall, we looked at a half a dozen other sites, but the cost of building a new police station, I think, most people would consider it daunting, the numbers we saw, and so the thought of renovating and expanding on the current site is something that's highly looked at and highly thought of. So when that day comes, if we do expand the building to the south, well, that public parking to the south is going to be reduced. So this property, we think, and I think the council thinks, I'll let Bob expand on this, could have possibilities for us in a number of ways. And it's available now because John is looking to sell, so it seemed like the time to have the conversation.
As Steve said, we've been having this conversation now for quite some time. Actually, the going back and forth with offers has just been of recent.
Yeah,
but
correct.
The idea, Josh was dealing with them, and the EDB was involved as well. And from the city's perspective, it's that 2nd Street corridor. It's something there. It could be parking. We definitely need parking at the plaza, and so it's kind of an ancillary thing. It's threefold. It'll be at the end there, so depending on what we do with that corridor, could be parking, and as well, we need to do something for the police department expansion. This could fit in there. So since they were looking to sell, it just seemed like a perfect fit. So we're all happy with everything. I know he's happy with everything. I believe we're looking to close in the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, he's accommodating our timing in terms of our borrowing and financial situation. He's not in that big a rush, so closing in early 2020 would be fine with Mr. Baltus. And dovetailing on what the mayor just said, there's another possible use. I mean, one of the items that we want for PD, besides expanding their building someday, is to provide some shelter for their vehicles. Right now they store squad cars out there between their building and the Chestnut Street right-of-way, and Chestnut Avenue right away, and that's not ideal. Two things. One, you're leaving it in the elements, which means rain, snow, ice in the winter. Certainly not the best scenario, but also to make sure that people are out there, in the area where they're not supposed to be looking at the vehicles, and they have guns in the vehicles and radio equipment. It's best to have them housed in a building. So this building could be a temporary storage facility for some of those police vehicles that are now being kept outside. So even in the more near term, it would have benefit for us, we believe.
Is that the only property you're looking at in that area of the downtown?
It is. When we talked about the 2nd Street corridor a couple of years ago, and I think even during the time that Mayor McManus has been here, we've looked at what could happen in terms of improving that northwest corner of downtown. But I think you probably heard us talk about the cost of relocating the Public Works garage being very extensive. And then the wine burning building, we've had conversations with them, good dialogue. It doesn't seem likely at this point that we're going to be able to help them build a new location elsewhere in the community. So if those two large facilities stay in place, the 2nd Street corridor, while it could happen, west of Chestnut will be reduced. So at this point, the Baltus property was the only dialogue that we've been having.
Okay, an official offer has not been made yet?
Yeah, there's been no written offer to purchase at this point. But what council came out last night in open session after the closed discussion and did was they authorized us to execute an offer to purchase for $250,000. There's some other conditions about things that we are looking for the seller to deal with, draining fuel oil tanks, cleaning up some equipment and supplies, cleaning up the grease traps, those kind of things. But for the most part, it's not too complex an offer that will be delivered to Mr. Baltus fairly soon.
All right, Mayor, I want to move on to it looks like the cell phone or electronic device ban, I guess, got passed Tuesday night. Maybe was there any discussion, or I don't think there was much, maybe just summarize it and the fact that it did pass and is now, I guess, timeline for implementation of this?
Timeline for implementation, and basically Steve wanted to make sure that he got together with Ing, our IT director, to make sure it's in the policy in the appropriate spot in our hundreds of thousands of policies that we have it in the right spot. But really, there wasn't any real discussion about it. I believe that everybody on the council really understands the notion behind it. Of number one, it could be a public records issue. Number two, it would be rude. I mean, can you imagine if we're talking right now, and then as we're talking, we take out a phone and we just start looking at it. There's an air to city staff or to your fellow aldermen that it's kind of rude. So there was a little bit, I believe there was one vote that didn't go that way for whatever reason that they have, but it is instituted or will be put in to simply, if you're going to have your phone there, that's fine. Just turn it off. There's no reason to be looking up something there. And the original thing is if somebody is communicating to an alderman by instant messaging, that technically is a public record. And so we don't want that to happen. I know in Madison, they had an issue where aldermen were texting back and forth during the meeting. Well, you've got a real big issue there. So Alderman Witzel brought it up with, let's not be the test case for this type of thing. So I'm optimistic about it, and I really hope that all the aldermen follow through with it. I believe as an elected official, we are an example, and so if we're saying, hey, this really shouldn't be done, then I think we need to go by that. So I think it should go through fine.
Yeah, I agree with everything Bob said. He nailed it. Just to add a little bit is the idea that, let's say you're on the council and you're engaging in messaging on Facebook or texting or whatever during the meeting, and a resident from a certain area writes and says, hey, look, you shouldn't approve this because this is what I see and this is what's going on in my neighborhood. And that person starts to say it. They start to, and the rest of the council is thinking, do we have a letter on this? Is there anybody I can ask to go to the podium and talk about what they're seeing? No, there isn't. It's just being relayed to you on the spur of the moment by an electronic source, and we can't even critique it. That's not good government either. So going with that, along with what Bob's already said about not communicating with each other to violate open meetings law, and just being nice in a way that we're treating everyone in a way that they know they're heard. When you're on your electronic device, it does not give the impression that you're really picking up what a resident or one of your peers is saying. Going back to the effectiveness, it will be effective right away. I'll be sending out a memo to that effect. So even while we're waiting to get placement in the policy, it's been embraced last night. It's just a matter of where it gets slotted in Chapter 8 of city policies. And we are going to also ask the same thing of our committees. This really started with council, but we would like committees to be honoring it the same way so that it's clear that they're giving full attention to their peers, staff, and residents who might come to the podium.
And phones have to be off completely, not just set to vibrate or something, or right?
That's the way it's
Completely
written,
off?
is off.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, one issue I've heard raised is, what if there's an emergency? My wife or husband, gets in an accident and needed to get a hold of me. We'll probably set something up where there can be some number called and the message can get to us that something has happened that a person really needs to tend to. But that is so much the rarity as opposed to just routine use that we're going to go with having them off and just, most of our meetings aren't that long. We've had some meetings that get fairly long, but look at last night, even with closed session, we were done in a little over an hour. You should be able to avoid your phone and just focus on the agenda materials for that length of time.
Follow up on that. Okay. All right. Pay raises for council members. Mayor, I understand that there was a pay raise that had been voted on, which has now been revoked basically by the council here moving forward.
Well, what was voted on last night was there's an automatic every year. It's revolving where it just gets every year that it should be going on, or it should be going up, just like city staff does. And so the presentation last night was for aldermen, let's not make that automatic that every year you're going to get a pay raise. I think it went up $7 a month. Just because all of us, the aldermen and myself, you don't get in these positions to make money when you're at local government. It's just not the way it is. And so realistically, the language was, let's take out that it's an automatic raise. So I do believe that the two dissenting votes didn't understand what the vote was, because they voted against it, which means that they would, by doing that, in essence, you're saying, let's get a raise every month. And that was clearly opposite of what they wanted to do. So that's a thing with some of these things sometimes, is a no vote is actually a yes vote. And you really have to be careful and really, go over what is written in our packet before. So I think it's fine just the way it is, that this won't continue.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it happened, and I was city administrator back in 2016. Bob wasn't mayor yet at that point. Was this notion that every year I was bringing a survey to them, and I was saying, well, look, this is where Stevens Point is, this is where Wisconsin Rapid is, this is where Wausau is, and they would notice that they were still at the same pay that they had been for a decade, and others were inching up. And this idea came, couldn't we tie it to future staff increases so we don't fall behind? So we don't wake up in 2030 and say, oh my gosh, we are so underpaid compared to every other city in the state. And that makes some sense. It's very difficult for councils to vote themselves a raise, to publicly stand up and tell your constituents, I'm voting to give myself more pay. But that was an attempt to try and do it on an ongoing basis. What we heard from both the city attorney and the legal staff in Madison with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities is, there may not be settled law on this. You could say, well, hey, back in 2016, we took a vote. It was public. Anybody could come and object. But the idea that that's ongoing in perpetuity really does seem to go against the spirit of state law, which requires elected officials to vote for specific pay increases every time they're looking to bump it up. So what we did was we held it. The first one of 2018 stands, but it'll stay at $382.50 until the next time, that's per month, until the next time the council sees fit to take an action publicly to increase it. I will continue to provide them annual or biannual information on what their comparables are making, and they can decide to do with it, what they wish.
Follow up. So is the city required to pay their aldermen anything?
It's all yours.
Do you have to pay them at all? Or is
no,
that a choice that
that's
the
a great
city?
question.
Is that a choice that the city makes?
Yeah, I believe that the state law provides for remuneration for elected officials, whether they be city, village, or town. I don't think it mandates it. It would be very uncommon to not provide pay for those who make final decisions. We have committee members. Plan Commission doesn't get paid anything. They generally aren't making final decisions. Everything has to be approved by the council. But for those who have authority to make those types of final decisions, it would be pretty rare that they not. I think, if I'm right, I can check this out for you, Mike. I think state law provides for you to do this. The mechanism, I don't think it mandates it, but I'll check.
I was just curious. So then you'll provide, like you said, ongoing updates, whether it be every year or every other year or something. Here's where, Wausau just gave their aldermen more money, and Point did the same thing last year. You'll kind of keep them updated on how far behind they're falling?
Yeah, and I normally try and do it sometime in like the January, February period. And we have seen where those other communities have edged up ahead of our council. And like I said, the awkward thing is to vote yourself a raise. But apparently others have done it, or they wouldn't be edging up beyond our council pay. So I will keep them posted, and if they feel fit. You heard Councilman Butke say last night that he has never voted for a pay raise and never will. Others may not agree. Others may say, as happened 3 years ago, if we want more people to come on board, we should at least pay them a little bit more. They're going to leave their families, go to these meetings at night when they're missing their kids' sports. That was the premise for trying to inch it up. But I think most of our council members would tell you they're not doing it for the money, they're doing it to be public service. And that's their main focus.
And, for the aldermen, not only do they attend the meetings that are the second and fourth Tuesday of the month for anywhere between 1.5 and 3 or 4 hours. You've got some prep time in there that you have, but many of them are on 2, 3, some of them 4 different committees as well. So you're talking about a pretty good chunk of time that's really being put in, and what they receive is not a lot. But I think it goes to, that at the end of the day, the buck does stop there with the decision making.
Agreed.
We'll follow up on that one. I thought I had one more.
Could I comment on the cable TV equipment if you don't have other things? I'll wait for you.
Let me just, I thought I guess that was it. Yeah, sure. So what is it? Cable TV operating supplies?
Yeah, as you know, Tom has been on board now for the better part of the year. Started on January 14th, so he's been with us now for 8 months. He's identified some equipment that we really need to upgrade. Technology is one of those things, if you don't keep up, you find yourself behind the 8 ball. And there's some items that are outdated, and if you don't have the right equipment, you can't do the job well. The main focus, and the reason I really wanted to bring this up, is because we used to have a fund historically, and it was $90,000 for most of the time it existed. And it was to make sure that if someday everything went south and we weren't getting the franchise fee payments anymore from this, from charter, because laws changed or whatever, that we would have a certain amount of money to pay Marwood for the lease of the building at 101 West McMillan, because we are obligated. The lease says you must pay. It doesn't say you must pay it unless you're not getting enough money from charter. So, but in recent times, we've kind of opened that fund a little bit and changed the rules on it so that it can be more accessible to fund equipment and other operational needs when they come up. So this seemed like the appropriate place to take a little under $10,000 and say, let's apply it to getting some quality equipment for 2019 here. And I think Tom has made it known that there will be other purchases coming forward in the coming months as well. A lot of things that he found were, pretty old, things that hadn't been replaced the way they should have been in the past. So we're just trying to keep up, and I want you to know that we're trying to move forward in that area.
Was there anything else in closed session?
Well, the item you see on TID 10, you probably recognize as being the mall. And, we're still hopeful to get to the finish line. I am in the next 30 days or so. Down to the nuts and bolts of what an agreement looks like. What will the city do to assist and on what time frame? What will the developer commit to? And everybody wants to protect themselves. The old days it used to be closer to a handshake. Well, these contracts have gotten fairly complicated because you look 2, 3, 4 years down the road. What if things change? What if the mall developers are in a very different position? What if things are not the same as they were in 2019? The city needs to protect itself for any investment we might make. But I will tell you, and Bob may want to expand on this, there are appearances that within the next month or so, we may be able to announce something that would be, I think, positive for everyone.
Yeah, I think he just explained it perfectly. We are down to that last bit where we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and I think it'll be great for the city. I mean, certainly for the residents. And so it's a very good thing, but you have a lot of entities going through the attorneys and whatnot back and forth. So a couple of blood draws and some EKGs and whatnot, and those test results should be back in soon. But it is looking very positive, and so we hope to be able to come out and maybe in 2 weeks, might not be for 4, but we're pretty optimistic about it.
And this developer, Ned Brickman, and his company, Midland Management, malls are a difficult sell these days. We're seeing a lot of malls close. We've seen what Wausau is doing in terms of struggling with keeping that mall going. But Mr. Brickman's been involved in some projects and has a decent track record. And he's pointed out one up in Marinette in northeastern Wisconsin, which seems to be kind of a parallel to what he's hoping to accomplish here. Josh Miller, our Development Services Director, actually went up and visited Marinette and looked at what's happened there and what they've got going, the tenants and the operation. And it seems like they've made some improvements and they've really gotten things going well there. This will not exactly be what's happening in Marinette. I'm just using that to show that the developer has a track record that has been positive. So even though malls are, as a whole, not flourishing in some cases, we feel good about where their plans might head here in Marshfield.
Anything else on that? Mayor, I was just going to ask you about, there were a couple last night. This is kind of unusual, midterm committee appointments, or I guess reassignments. Maybe just talk about the changes that were made. Normally these are things that happen at the start of the city's new year, so to speak, after April elections, but you've made some changes here midterm to a couple of the committees in the city?
And it gets down to, there's a big requirement of time for the aldermen. And so this was just basically adjusting to some requests to be on, or to go to different committees. Mr. Jokic wanted to step down from the Fair Committee, and Mr. Bargender went on. So now to cover that spot, Mr. Jokic, and this will be on our next one, is going to go over to the Utility, and Mr. Bargender will come off. Mr. Fire will be going to Main Street, and Jason Zaleski is coming off. So it's just, we normally try to keep everybody on for the full year, but they all have lives and different things going on, and so we try to accommodate that.
And these council liaisons are important positions. We want them to be people who can make it. Sometimes a person will say, yeah, I'll be on that committee as the city's representative, and then the time doesn't work with their work schedule, or they're just not able to make the meetings. Well, that's not good. Then you have the committee or board saying, where's our council representative to hear what we're doing? One of the things I've talked to Bob before about, and I think we'll keep working on this, is under reports from committees, boards, and commissions, we sometimes think of that as somebody in the audience coming forward to go to the podium and say, well, here's what we're doing in the Police and Fire Commission. But probably more times than not, it could be people who are on the council. Someone raising their hand and getting the mayor's attention and saying, yeah, I serve as the city's representative to Parks, Recreation, and Forestry, and I want you to know what happened at their last meeting. They're talking about potentially a major upgrade to Park XYZ in 2020, and I think you should know about that. So not just coming to the meetings, but it's also important, I think, for those folks to report what they can out of what's being discussed so the entire body knows. That's part of what being a liaison is. Not just to learn for yourself, but to share what's going on. And I think we ought to work a little harder as best we can to try and promote that as well.
Any construction updates? Seems to be winding down the season anyway. Anything delays or otherwise that you can tell us about? Obviously the big one is Central Avenue.
Well, and if you've driven down Central in the last 24 to 48 hours, you could see that they got some more blacktop on the other part there. And so the construction season is winding down, which is good. Many of these things, I believe they're supposed to be completely done by the 24th. So net bottom line, there was a 3-week delay, which is fine. But I will say, Dan Connect did a tour for citizens, many aldermen, a bus tour to show people in the city all the different projects going on. And every time he does that, all we hear is sheer amazement from the people that show up. People really don't have any idea how much is really going on within the city. And it's all, so far, stayed within budget that we're aware of, and stayed on time with the exception of Central Avenue. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. People only know sometimes what they see in their neighborhood or on their way from work to home, and it's good for them to see how many streets are being improved across the community. We can't do them all in 1 year, and Bob worked really hard when he came here to work with Dan Kinect and Tom Turchi, our city engineer, to get a schedule, a 3-year schedule that people can refer to and see, hey, look, it looks like my street's going to be done in 2021, and it may get moved back to 2022 if pressing issues with other streets come first, but you can at least be sure that something is happening. I would like to say, in addition to North Central, it is possible that a couple of our millet overlay projects may be delayed into 2020, and that's because of the same weather we're talking about now, which is that the whole season got backed up 3 or maybe 4 weeks in some cases, and that we may not get to the finish line with every one of those projects. We do about $2 million of work a year on those overlays. The lion's share are going to be done, but there might be a couple that have to carry over into 2020, and we'll communicate with those folks so they understand that it was largely weather related. A lot of the rain we had during the summer moved that schedule back.
So maybe just comment on, Sunday was a nice day for groundbreaking in downtown Marshfield, and I get a chance to be a part of Wesley's groundbreaking ceremonies and just talk about the importance of that and that event a little bit, and being able to be a part of, I guess, their next chapter.
Yes, that was very exciting. I mean, Pastor Lourdes, she has done a great job with that church, and many of the bishops were here that day, and I believe it was just a year and a couple of days from when the actual fire took place that they're actually groundbreaking. That has a lot to do with Terry Franklin. They've just done a great job, but it was really good to be a part of that. I remember, as I said that day, when it was, you just pulled up, and as you saw this flames flying out, and our fire department was there putting in thousands of gallons of water, and this thing was just roaring. And I just remember that their parishioners kept showing up, and they were resolved that night that they were going to rebuild. And it was very interesting how the community really embraced them. They gave them different churches, different types of churches, gave them their places of worship to hold their worship services. It was really incredible. So it's nice that it's back up, and that's part of Marshfield history. That property's been there, that building has been there for a long time. So it was very, very nice to be a part of.
And Steve, just from the city standpoint, it's all zoned accordingly, and the building project is all basically ready to go.
Yeah, I think there was something that went through the commission, the planning commission, regarding combining two parcels. Mm-hmm. And making sure the zoning was right. But yeah, they're all set to go. They've got the approvals they need from the city. And I want to echo what Bob said, the resiliency of that congregation and the support of the community. I know sometimes we tend to talk like, this is the kind of thing you wouldn't see in a big city. I know there's great people in Chicago and New York and other places, but when you see this happen the way it's gone down since that fire, it really does speak well of a small community here that really cares about one another and wants to pitch in and help where they can.
I think the biggest thing, in the climate that we have in the world right now, you don't see a lot of people of different faiths joining, and here it was very interesting to see people that worship differently come together, and we might worship differently, but you're still important. And I think that's a testament to the citizens of Marshfield.
Can I just go ahead?
You go ahead.
I want to add one thing on another topic.
Yeah.
I think recently that a business on the south end closed down off 29th, and I know there were some comments, and some of it was online about the city's involvement in economic development and whether we're on top of things. I just want to assure people of a couple things. First of all, when a business closes, we don't always know what's coming. I think people believe that City Hall has advance notice of everything that happens. When somebody wakes up one day and puts a sign in their business and closes for whatever reason, we're not always aware of it. But we try our very best to keep up on what's going on. As soon as we become aware of things, we try to work with other agencies, maybe to help the workforce find other jobs. We start looking at opportunities to repurpose buildings. So I think the idea that might have come out of some of that dialogue, that, is City Hall asleep at the wheel or whatever, you can be assured that here every day that Josh Miller and his department and all the city departments, the council, the mayor, are doing whatever we can to try and recruit and keep quality businesses. It's not like we're not paying attention. And that might sound a little abrupt to say it the way I just did, but I think it's worth noting in the midst of all the scatter talk sometimes that we're doing whatever we can to promote business. I mean, there's been talk about Shopco and these kind of things. Well, we have staff constantly trying to work with people to grow existing businesses and to draw new businesses whenever it's possible.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. What's interesting is we've had our share of businesses close over the last year or so. But what we don't hear enough of, and it's not because you all don't report it, because you do. I see your articles and I hear them, and I certainly appreciate them. But I don't think what most people realize is that in Marshfield, just this year, there have been 13 new businesses open. Businesses don't open in a climate where they don't see an opportunity, certainly not like this. But 13 businesses open and 18 businesses expand. And what's very interesting is when there is a closing, there's of a business, it's always sad, but you just see all kinds of comments.
Yeah.
And but when there's an opening, it's very few, and you just wonder how could that be, because that information is getting out. But we're very, very proud of our businesses. I'm very thankful for Mackie and Scott Larson and what they all do over there, because they are a great source for businesses that maybe need help or they're thinking of expanding. They've got so many different sources to help them. So overall, our business, that climate is very good.
Yeah, I'll add Main Street as well. I mean, I think most people know Main Street as an organization that promotes events and activities, Hub City Days, those types of things. But a big part of their job is trying to recruit and keep quality businesses in those units downtown. And Kaylee and the board are always trying to keep up with what other communities have. Hey, would you be interested in opening a satellite of your business here in Marshfield? So there's a lot of people who work really hard to try and keep businesses growing and coming here. And decisions like the ones made by Office Max or Shopco's issue, they're beyond our control, but we do what we can to make this a better community.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that when a business is successful, we have a lot of them here, Rail, PC, we could just go on and on and on. When they are successful, they are 100% successful because of what those owners and what those employees do to make their product or to give their service. They need to have all of the praise and accolades for their success. At the same time, when a business goes out of business, that blame shouldn't fall to the city, because we can't give all the praise and accolades to the business owners when it's going great, and then blame others when it doesn't go well. So I think that's something that's very important. We at the city try very hard. Josh Miller, as Steve mentioned, does a great job looking at other businesses that want to come here and getting them going as quickly as possible. And Mackie, we really help out our businesses as much as we possibly can. But their successes are all theirs. We're here to help in any way possible, but we're very proud of our businesses. And the businesses that are opening, that are thriving, escape rooms going well, Uptown Coffee, you can get a pumpkin spice latte thing. And they're doing great down there. They're over there on Sundays. They were up on, what was the one we just had, Labor Day. Open that and it's packed.
Yeah.
Which I think it's great that on a Sunday, on a Monday, an establishment downtown is packed. I think it's great.
Well, and I'm going to throw a few kudos the mayor's way, because I think those two conversations we had in April and June with a lot of leaders from the community about economic development, about housing, about other things, what can we do? And some ideas have come out of that, and some things are already moving forward. And one of the things that's been talked about is how can we appeal to younger people? And coffee shops and some of those things are very important. City employees are not going to run them, so don't worry that you're not going to find Steve Bard trying to make a pumpkin spice latte, which is good because I don't drink coffee drinks. But you know, providing the environment where those folks can develop and flourish. How can we help you get off the ground in terms of questions you have, city service needs? That's something we learn from these meetings with other people, and we're trying to help move them forward.
I just have two quick things I want to go over.
Okay.
The Around the Corner with John McGivern
Yeah.
is taping here this week, and he's on PBS. The show is supposed to air sometime, I understand, in March or April. I'll be meeting them later today, but they've been over to our zoo, a few different areas. They met with the Howards, and it's great. Marshfield's going to be a great little advertisement that we get throughout the entire country. So I think that's very good. The other thing is just to give you a quick update on the pool. Fundraising is going very well. There will be a press release coming out. You can also go to Justin Casperson for the exact amounts, but we already have just about $500,000 already committed. And normally when you go out and you're looking at big donors, you know, those decisions for 100 to 150 plus, those can take months to cultivate. And we've already had two come in that in just a matter of a couple of weeks. So we're very excited about that. But in the other meetings that are going on with the people that are still deciding or seeing what their budget's on, what is amazing to me is, because we heard, do people in Marshfield have giving, they're donating fatigue?
Yeah.
Because I know in other parts of the state here, they just don't get the same donations that we do here. What's very, very interesting is as we go to call many donors that have donated to other things, their level of enthusiasm, I mean, they're so happy with and proud of, you know, the library, the plaza, the expansion of the Y, the new athletic facility, the things going on in the zoo. They're so proud. They take a real sense of pride in their city and what they're doing to help it out. We're really experiencing that right now with the pool. The level of enthusiasm it's been a surprise, and it's been something that's been very enjoyable to do. And I'm looking forward to when that pool can actually open. But so far, it's going very well, and you'll see a couple of press releases on who they are. I know Prevention Genetics was $150,000 just right off the bat, one meeting, 20-minute meeting. And I know that I know we have one for $250,000. We have other various 25, 15 here and there, and we'll get a full press release on that. But I just want to give you an update that it's so far going very well.
Yeah, and let me just add one thing to that. You know, this is a great place. When my wife and I moved here in 2011, I mean, I heard a couple people say, oh, you know, Marshfield is kind of boring, and we lived here for how many years? But there's a lot of great things about this community, and we tend to beat ourselves up about what we don't have. Oh, we don't have water. You know, if only we had a man-made lake, this would be a great place. Instead of focusing on the really wonderful things that we have. I mean, there's not another city our size that I'm aware of that has a quality zoo like Marshfield, and all the other amenities that make this a nice place. I think, and Bob's been great at this, and others are as well, promoting the positive. Let's not, I mean, it's great that somebody wants to study possibly a man-made lake, and if it's feasible financially and otherwise, wonderful. But to beat ourselves up because of what we don't have when we have so much is kind of counterproductive.